Thank you very much for the invitation to come and speak to you. My name's Warburton, and I have the rather natty title of National Tourism Strategy Coordinator for the Scottish Tourism Alliance. Must be one of the longest job titles, I think, around. I'm conscious that this is what's known as the graveyard slot. You've all had a lovely lunch and are all thinking, right, I'll just have a little snooze. And this time last week, I was involved with our National Tourism Conference, which is called Scottish Tourism Week. And it's the big key national conference. We had 400 guys in the room, all involved in tourism. It's a conference which is organised by the private sector. We as the Scottish Tourism Alliance organise it, and we invite the public agencies to come along and join us. And my colleague Mark was on stage at this point of the proceedings, and he decided that this is what we should be doing at 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. So if you'd all like to get to your feet, no, you're all right, don't worry. Well done, Manda. But what it does remind me, and this was something else that we did in the afternoon, we had everybody decorating cupcakes, and we had a cupcake competition. And what it really reminded me is that, tourism is about people, and it's about people having fun. We work in a fantastic industry. We're giving people holidays, we're entertaining them, we're letting them relax, we're giving them leisure. And I think all too often we get a bit serious about tourism and we get very earnest. And what we wanted to try and get across last week was that we're part of one of the best industries in the world, I would say, and we need to remember that. So, you're probably thinking, what has the National Tourism Strategy Coordinator got to do with responsible tourism? Well, I think if we get it right, if we get responsible tourism right, then the National Tourism Strategy should have everything to do with responsible tourism. And I'm not suggesting that in Scotland we have got everything right, far from it. However, I think we've moved a step forward in the last few years in terms of actually getting the industry to take responsibility for the development of tourism in Scotland. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that today. So the National Tourism Strategy, this is it, Tourism Scotland 2020, was launched in June 2012. There were over 600 conversations with the industry in order to come up with the strategy. And as you can see, right up front is the statement that the future of the Scottish tourism industry is in our hands as the industry. And within this, even from very first principles, it resonates with a lot of the responsible tourism principles that people have been talking about today in terms of engagement, empowerment, authenticity, and building the capabilities of the industry to be able to sustain it into the future. So the challenge is, can the tourism industry take responsibility for their own sector? By way of background, for those of you who don't know much about tourism in Scotland, it's a key part of the Scottish economy. The Scottish Government has identified it as one of the key economic sectors. Overnight spend, 4.4 billion. The visitor economy, considerably wider at 10.9, 13,000 enterprises, but perhaps significantly it employs 1 in 12 people in Scotland. It's a big employer. In terms of the support that we have Visit Scotland, our tourist board. They are responsible for marketing Scotland in the UK and around the world. And we have what we call our enterprise agencies, or our economic development agencies. And we have 2 of those, they're regional, and they're responsible for the economic development side of tourism. So we have 2 key agencies that we work with. I work for an organisation called the Scottish Tourism Alliance, and we're a private sector organisation. We are, the Scottish Government calls us the Tourism Leadership Group. We're a membership association. We have 250 members, and we are the voice of the private sector. And it's the Scottish Tourism Alliance who has been invited to have the guardianship of the Tourism Scotland 2020 strategy. So right from the off, it's not the public sector strategy. Strategies tend to be developed by the tourist board or by the government. It's our strategy, right industry, you own it, you drive it. So, first things first, let's let the industry lead. By letting them lead, as I say, the public sector is no longer the driving force. They don't need to worry about taking responsibility, but equally, we have to then think about how we're going to deliver it. It's not the Scottish Government strategy, it's not the Tourist Board strategy, it's not even Scottish Tourism Alliance's strategy, and it's definitely not my strategy, which I'm often introduced. This is Caroline and her strategy, which is a bit of a weighty responsibility for me. And so the language is really important. How do we talk about this? It's our strategy. So we've done a lot of work over the last few years around developing a common language. There are lots of people, 200,000 people employed in tourism, and we've all worked away in our little silos, whether it's a destination, whether it's a sectoral group. I come from the wildlife and adventure tourism sector, and I used to work within that group. And that's important. We need to have those specialisms. We need to have that focus on our key activities, but we need to talk the same language. The tourist doesn't see any difference between wildlife watching and going for a walk. They see it all. They don't see any difference between that and going out to a nice restaurant in the evening. And we need to recognise that. So what TS 2020, Tourism Scotland 2020, provides is a framework. It's all it is. It's providing a framework for each of these groups or sectors or whoever wants to get involved to shape it for their own use, but it's not intended to restrict or restrain any kind of activity. So these are some examples of how TS 2020 is starting to develop. These are all different strategies. You can probably work out what most of them are, and they all look completely different. But the common strand is that they are all linked to the tourism strategy. They all follow the same framework. They all align with similar visions, with similar targets. And we're not trying to restrict any activity. All we're doing is getting everybody to face in the same direction. So the key themes that are coming through are around authenticity, are around quality experiences. We're aligning with the vision. We're able to identify what are those common themes, but also where are the challenges, where are those common challenges which we at a national level need to be working on. And this is a significant step forward in Scotland. We all work away in our isolation, and to actually have all of these strategies, and I can assure you there's a lot more, which are all facing in the same direction, is a big culture change for us in Scotland. So one example, the pink strategy down here, Tourism Falkirk. I don't know if you know where Falkirk is, north of Glasgow. It's not a particularly big region, but it has a couple of key attractions in it. I started to look at how many destination strategies there were in Scotland. Scotland's not a big country, 5 million people live in it, and we have over 25 destination strategies in Scotland. That seems like quite a lot for a relatively small country, but with respect, a lot of the local authorities are keen to have their own local strategy. That's fine. Let's actually get them all to start to align. So we're now finding that we've got 15, 20 strategies, all of which follow this same format, this framework here, so that I can pick up, or anybody can pick up any of these documents, and they can instantly see where are the key opportunities in Falkirk, how does that compare to the Outer Hebrides, how does that compare to Shetland, how does that compare to Edinburgh. And it's really making quite a difference in terms of how the destinations are starting to relate to each other. Where are those regional strengths? So you're probably starting to think, okay, Caroline, so come on then, what is this strategy? What is this amazing thing? Well, there's not much to it, I'm delighted to say, because we've tried to keep it simple. Businesses being businesses, we don't want to read long documents. We want something that's straight, to the point, it's not going to sit on a shelf. So we've come up with a clear vision. We've come up with a clear target. Our target is to increase visitor spend by £1 billion by 2020. And that's not through more visitors necessarily, it's through increasing the spend within of the visitors who are coming to Scotland. And we've identified these 4 themes. Looking at our growth markets, this is what businesses want to know. Where are my customers going to come from? Providing those authentic experiences. What are our assets? What makes Scotland special? Customer journey, recognising that it's not just about the accommodation, it's not just about the attraction, it's about all the other elements that go behind it. And then looking at the long-term sustainability for Scotland in terms of building leadership, building innovation into the sector. So you're probably thinking, what's with the rocket? Well, This is our strategy. One page, that's it. I don't know if you can read it particularly well. Sorry, I've just found the hole in the floor. And this is our rocket, this is what we call it. So this is the tourism rocket for Scotland. The marine tourism guys have identified, have done their own rocket, they call it a yacht. The heritage tourism guys have done their own rocket and they call it a temple. So it's completely flexible, you can call it what you like. Where are we? So the question is, so how, it's all very well, but how are we actually going to deliver it? And again, it's not about the Scottish Tourism Alliance, Tourist Board, enterprise companies taking control and going off and delivering big projects. It's about working with what we've got. There are less and less resources available in Scotland, and I'm sure it's the same here, certainly in terms of public money and finance. So we need to work through the existing networks that we have. And again, this is where the value of working with the industry and through the industry comes into its fore. The Scottish Tourism Alliance is called an alliance because we're an association of associations. We have 250 members and 60 of those are associations like the ones that you see here. And through their network, we can reach 60 to 70% of the Scottish tourism industry. Now, people who have chosen to join these groups, join them because they trust them. They will listen to people. So if we can convey messages through these networks, we're helping to support these networks. People see that they're getting value for their membership, but we're also helping to change attitudes and drive the kind of key messages that we're wanting to get through the strategy. The Scottish Tourism Alliance is not a big organisation. There are 5 of us, and I'm the only person who has responsibility for the strategy. So I can't deliver it on my own. I need to rely on these networks in order to get things delivered. You may be wondering, who are these smiling faces? Well, these are 4 of our industry champions, and there is a national strategy tourism group. And these are 4 of individuals who are all industry people, industry leaders who have stepped up to the mark to help drive it forward. Chap on the left is a big hotelier, owns 6 or 7 hotels. He chairs our group. The lady is the events director of the Glasgow Science Centre, and she heads up our business tourism activity. The shorter chap, he's not here, so you won't know I said that, is the commercial director at Historic Scotland, and he heads up our heritage tourism activity. And the gentleman on the right is Brigadier David Alfrey, who is the producer of the Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo. And all these guys, they're all in the industry, private sector, have stepped up to really try and help drive it, and this is what's creating the energy to actually move things forwards. But one thing I would say is that I think sometimes there's a bit of frustration that things aren't moving forwards very quickly, and particularly, if I might say so, with the public sector gets frustrated with us. Well, why haven't you got that project implemented? We can only move forward at the speed that the private sector can move at, and all of these people have day jobs. So we're asking for things over and above what they're doing. Most of the organisations here and most tourism associations don't have staff members. They're not publicly funded. They have a voluntary board of people who are running their own business, sitting on the board of the association and contributing to the National Tourism Strategy. So it's about helping them to do their jobs. And if we can crack that, then we really will make a sustainable difference to the tourism industry. So, how are we doing? Have we got a genuinely industry-led tourism strategy? Well, no, we haven't, if I'm completely honest. But I can see a massive culture change in the last 2 to 3 years since we started with this different approach. It's not the Tourist Board strategy. It's not the Economic Development Agency strategy. It's our strategy. One of the big issues that we have in Scotland is around engagement. You know, we know that there are 200,000 people out there. We know there are 15,000 businesses. How do we get them to be engaged? They don't need to know about the tourism strategy. A little B&B probably doesn't care much about whether there's a one-page strategy, but we do want them to care about the principles, about authenticity, about quality, about customer service. And that's the challenge for us over the next little while. There's a real genuine willingness for the industry to take a lead, undoubtedly, and that common language is starting to come through. When I start to hear presentations from people using the language of the Scottish tourism strategy, I feel that we're actually starting to make a change in that culture. And I think there's a real recognition that tourism is everyone's business in Scotland. We've noticed that the Scottish Parliament is now starting to use the visitor economy terms, and that florists and plumbers, taxi drivers are all seeing themselves as part of the tourism industry. The reason for this picture up here, this was from last week. This is one of the debates that we had at the Scottish Tourism Week conference, and this was a debate on transport. It was called Planes, Trains, Boats and Automobiles, and we didn't put on the coaches and we got told off for that. So the 5 people here, the guy on the left who was chairing it, who's one of our board members, is the Chief Executive of Edinburgh Airport. We've got, next in is the COO from Loganair, which is the regional airline. Guy in the middle is from Abellio. They're just about to take on the ScotRail franchise from the 1st of April. Marketing director from CalMac, who do most of our inter-island ferries, Stagecoach and Arnold Clark Car Hire. And the debate that we had was all around customer experience and how they are involved in the tourism industry. 2 years ago, we couldn't have had that discussion. We were talking about tourism ambassadors going on to, they were talking about tourism ambassadors going on to trains, talking about smart ticketing, talking about working with tour operators, discounted rates. None of this conversation would have been happening 2 years ago. And there really is a change in how tourism is perceived in Scotland. So I think we are making a difference. The future of Scotland is in our hands, and we are trying to take a hold of it. It's not always easy, but we are trying. And Bernadette used exactly the same quote as I'm about to use, because I think it really just hits the nail on the head around collaboration, and that's around from Henry Ford about coming together. And I think that the future of Scottish tourism is in our hands, and the same way that the future of Irish tourism should be in your hands. You are the industry. You need to make it work for you as businesses and as destinations and as communities. Thank you very much.